So I was lucky enough to go out on the launch of the Tiger 900 in Morocco last year, pre-COVID, beginning of the year. We flew out there and did all sorts of like great riding, you know, off-roading, these big marble smooth sweeping bends through the national parks. And of course, I loved it, and I'm pretty sure that I was quite clear about that in the video. But what I wanted to do was revisit it because realistically, most of these bikes in the UK are just going to be doing a lot of like motorway miles, time in the saddle, in a straight line at high speed. So that's exactly what I've been doing with this bike for the past couple of weeks, and it has been brilliant. And I'll tell you today some of my favorite features in terms of like long distance touring comfort, and a couple of things at the end that potentially could be improved. Now, you may have noticed that this is heavily spec'd out. So the Rally Pro already comes with most of the accessories catalog on it. So peripheral lights, lower engine bars, heated grips, heated seat, all the good stuff. And then Triumph have accessorized this model to show off some of the other bits and bobs you can get. So headlight protector, upper engine bars as well. Full luggage at the back there, so really this is like the most premium spec that you can get the Tiger 900 in, and it'll probably cost you up around 15 grand, I think, to spec it out like this. But it really ought to be suited for long distance touring with all those features and bits. But before we get started, if you're new here and you want to see more motorcycle reviews like this, as well as plenty of adventure bikes, I've got the 890 Adventure in the garage at the moment. I've got a 1250 GS coming soon as well. So if you want to see those videos as soon as they go live, then please do hit subscribe. So first up, a quick look at the riding position. Now, this is one of the most comfortable bikes I've had for a good while. I've really enjoyed sitting in on it like a big armchair on the motorway, but it is quite tall, especially with this luggage on that makes it that little bit more top heavy. Look, I'm 5'9", so not super tall, and I've got to say, in the taller seat setting, which is 870mm, it's a bit too sketchy for me, so I've dropped it down to 850. That's just about manageable if I get my bum cheek off one side to reach a foot down and get it properly planted. But what that does mean is I'm dropped down like 2 centimeters, so slightly lower versus the top of the screen there, and also the bars come up that little bit higher, so I've found the riding position super comfortable. I love the foot peg position as well. It's nice and low and quite far forward. And one of the side benefits of riding an adventure bike is that it has a decent standing position, and I've actually found that beneficial. If you're doing like a long stint and you want to stretch your legs out, stretch your back, you can just stand up for like 5-10 seconds and it gives you that little bit of relief. Another great thing about the seat on this bike, apart from the adjustability, is that it's heated. On both the Rally Pro and the GT Pro standard, you get a heated seat with 2 settings from the switchgear there. And there's also a heated passenger seat with its own dedicated controls with 2 levels just under the seat there. So nice and toasty, and you also get heated grips as standard with 3 levels. Now, the weather can be pretty variable at this time of year, but I've found with both of them switched on and a couple of layers, in fact, Triumph gave me this windproof base layer to put under my jacket to test, and I've found this really good for blocking out the wind. And then with a bit of heat from both of these, I'm nice and toasty for most situations. It's only when it gets a bit colder that I crack the heated jacket out. Speaking of which, another neat feature is that there's a 12-volt socket just nestled between the TFT dash and the bars there. So you could plug your heated gear in there or a sat nav or something like that, but I've actually found it's neater to run it sort of down out of your jacket and then to the socket at the back here under the pillion seat. So basically with those 2 plugs, you've got plenty of options, and your passenger could even ride with heated gear as well. I also find for those like longer rides, it's really good to have a nice big dash with plenty of space to display all the different information that you can get. And I find that this is one of the most visible and easy to navigate screens that I've tried on any bike recently. Really good. You've got loads of connectivity options with your phone, so navigation prompts, you can change the volume of your music, skip to the next track, GoPro connectivity, messages and phone calls, all that stuff that we've come to expect from a modern motorcycle, and it's all navigated with a little joystick on the left switchgear here. There are plenty of layout options, different colors. You can have a day mode or a night mode, and it can be automatic and detect which one to display. I've just found it really readable, easy to use, and it's a great feature of the cockpit on this bike. Of course, another big comfort on the motorway is cruise control, and we've got various different ideas for implementations on motorcycles, the most cutting edge of which this year we're starting to see is adaptive cruise control, where bikes use a radar to follow the traffic in front. Now, that tech hasn't made it onto a Triumph yet, but second best is a system where you can actually nudge the speed up and down by 1 mile an hour from the switchgear. Some bikes have a single button where you've got to get your exact speed right and then set it, and you can either resume that speed or disable it. But realistically, the motorway motorways are so busy in the UK that you're constantly needing to adjust your speed to make sure that you're not getting too close to traffic in front. I much prefer this type of cruise control, and it's well implemented on this bike, a big factor being that the cruise control button is on the left switch gear, because some bikes have it on the right, and trying to hold the throttle in the right position and set the cruise control is just like really tricky. So this is a much more preferable setup. It could only be bettered by being adaptive. I really like that feature when I tried it out on the BMW R1250 RT a few weeks ago, but I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing that more widely in the motorcycle market. And of course, on this press bike, we've got the three-piece luggage, the aluminium hard cases. I think it makes the bike look like twice as good. They really suit adventure bikes, don't they? But it doesn't come as standard on any of the Tigers. You'd have to spec it at the dealer, and it ain't cheap. I mean, luggage generally isn't cheap, especially when you factor in the mounts and stuff, but I think it's really nicely made, really suits the bike. Your ignition key locks the boxes as well, so there's not a separate key if you got like a third-party set of luggage. I've found the side cases really easy to get on and off. The top box will take a lid as well, so if you're at you know, little stop off and you want to stick your lid in there while you walk about, then you can do that. It'll only take one, but if you're riding solo, plenty of space. And so for me on this bike, that's another big tick. In terms of improvements for this bike, I mean, the screen is really good. It's one hand adjustable like that. I'd probably do that before I join the motorway. You know, you probably don't want to be reaching over and giving the front end a good shove while you're doing 70 with traffic all around you. But the ability to make that adjustment on the fly is definitely a good thing. But I do find that even with it in the up position, my head is just that little bit too high to be super quiet and out of that turbulent buffeting zone. There's a fix for it though. They do sell a deflector, which would probably just push it up over my head. But if you're a particularly tall rider, you might want to take it for a quick test ride and see how comfortable you find it. I'm sure there are probably aftermarket third-party bigger windscreens as well, so that might be worth researching if you're particularly sensitive to buffeting and wind noise, or if you're a super tall rider. The other thing worth mentioning is this engine as well. Now, this is the first time that Triumph have put a T-plane crank in one of their triples, so as opposed to the Roadsters and the previous generation Tiger where you have a even firing interval between each of the cylinders, this one is uneven, so it has a rougher feel, and they've done that to give it more of a sense of torque, I think they say, in the lower revs, which should make it better off-roading. And it does feel great in the low revs. It has a brilliant sound to it. And essentially they're trying to compete with the parallel twins with the 270 crank, like the Africa Twin or the KTM 890. But you know, as with most things, there are compromises, and it does vibe that little bit more than one of their regular triples. I've read a few owners' comments on forums and that sort of thing, and a few people find it a little bit irritating. Personally, I don't think it's too bad around 60 or 70, and you only begin to notice it when you push on to 85, which obviously, officer, I've never done in my life, but if I did, that's where you'd find that vibe starts to get a little bit more wearying on the hands and feet. Like I say, it's a trade-off, and personally I think it's worth it for all of the character and feel that it gives it lowering the revs. But if you're sensitive to vibey bikes, then definitely try one out before you buy. I reckon it's only previous generation Tiger 800 owners that will actually find it a problem, because if you look at the competition, like I say, the Africa Twin or the 890 Duke, I mean, I picked an 890 Duke up yesterday from KTM, and that's not any smoother than this bike. So it does have more of that feel of a twin, and like I say, it's the previous gen owners who are used to that super smooth triple in the Tiger 800 that might just notice the difference. In all fairness, this bike is designed to be a bit of an all-rounder, so it's meant to be good off-road, it's meant to be good on the twisties, and it's also meant to be able to do a bit of mile munching. If you're just doing that kind of riding and lots of it, then you might be better looking at the Tiger 1200. Now, it is due an update soon, so it'll be interesting to see if they go with the T-plane. I suspect not. I think they'll leave it with an even firing order so that you've got a very, very smooth bike for those big motorway miles. Anyway, that's it for today with the Tiger 900. I've thoroughly enjoyed having this bike for the past couple of weeks, so a big thanks to Triumph as always for the loan. If you've got any questions, leave them down below and I'll try and get back to you. And if you're new here and you want to see more reviews like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.